Hello, I'm Renee, and today I'm going to walk you through some smoke testing for fleet device management. Now, smoke testing is a set of specific tests that cover core functionality that are run before running any deeper testing. So before acceptance testing, before exploratory testing, you would run smoke tests in I'm going to mix some metaphors, a where there's smoke, there's fire type of situation. So they're your canary in the coal mine. They're what tells you if anything is wrong with these core functionalities, we have something much bigger to investigate before we spend a lot of time investigating either specific feature changes or exploration around user experience. And it's just one category of testing. In our case, we've got these tickets that are visible to anyone who's curious within GitHub that talk about how to run and what to look for in our smoke tests. We've only got about 4 of them, and they cover updating from older versions, logging in and logging out, creating and deleting hosts, creating and deleting queries. So if we come over here to Fleet, you'll see I have 257 hosts, and I'm running version 4.3.0. This is so that I can upgrade to 4.4.2, and you can see that all of these hosts will still exist. Another way to run that would be with queries or policies saved so that you can make sure that those are not negatively affected by an upgrade to a more recent version. If we come over here to Fleet, you will see that I'm running version 4.3.0 so that we can upgrade cleanly and make sure that if any queries or policies that we have in place remain in place after the upgrade. In this case, I'm going to verify using hosts. You'll see that I have 257 hosts, and I expect to see all of them when I upgrade. We're using preview, so if you're familiar at all with Fleet Control Preview, I can target any specific tag, and that's what we're going to do here. A little fat fingering on my part. So we're targeting the 4.4.2 tag. We'll let that run. It takes a little bit of time because Docker is a bit of a resource hog. So what I would do normally after running smoke tests, assuming that they all pass, is I would spend some time investigating around the features that called for this patch release. End-to-end tests will have already been run automatically. So that means that we've let computers do what computers do really well, which is verify happy paths and verify button sizes, texts, that clicking in a specific sequence results in what you expect. And we can let me focus on what humans do very well, which is what happens if your toddler comes in and starts playing with your laptop because you're distracted. What happens if you are impatient and while something is loading, you click the button 5 times instead of 1. And observing with my eyes and with my personal preferences what kind of experience I'm getting from using the software. That's something that you really can't replace a human for. And it is sort of a critical part, especially when a product is less mature or when you're introducing significant changes, to make sure you're getting human input. So you may notice that we skipped a little bit of time so that you didn't have to watch everything initialize. But we should now, if I refresh, be on version 4.4.2. All right, we still have 257 hosts. And this does not say the same tag that we put in, but it corresponds to the same tag. If I go over and show you within Docker, these two are the same. So we're on the right version, we're upgraded, things are loading. Things are loading a little slowly, but that's because of the screen share. All right, so now we can do a little bit of sanity checking and deleting some hosts. We see that the number automatically updates. This would be a separate issue because the number has updated. So this is a separate issue where we've got sort of a UI refresh issue happening here. Let's try that again and see if it reproduces. All right, so it's automatically checking whatever's the next one down. And what I would do is I would go back to the previous stapled version and make sure it doesn't reproduce there. If it doesn't reproduce there, then we've introduced a new issue. And if it does reproduce there, then this is a known issue or needs to be documented, but is not necessarily pressing. It could be. I could have found something that would prevent us from pushing this out. But if it reproduces in a stable version and also in a new patch release, then the benefits of getting the reason the patch release went out outweigh any issues. Right, that's definitely something to document and move on with testing. So we've checked that we can upgrade. We're going to check that we can not log in if we use invalid credentials, and that it's letting us know that authentication failed, but it's not presenting any information such as your password is incorrect or something that could potentially help someone be malicious. I'm just being impatient here. All right, so we can log in. We're prevented from logging in if we need to. We can upgrade. We can delete hosts. So something else that we want to make sure that we can do is that we can add, remove, and run queries. And this is something that is very basic core behavior. This is not the extent of tests that we would run, but this is what we would check before getting into. I'm just being impatient here. All right, so we can log in. We're prevented from logging in if we need to. We can upgrade. We can delete hosts. So something else that we want to make sure that we can do is that we can add, remove, and run queries. And this is something that is very basic core behavior. This is not the extent of tests that we would run, but this is what we would check before getting into the weeds. So we're here with any query. We want to make sure that we can run it. Against some subset of our hosts at least. You may notice this is a really high number of hosts to have offline, but they're all dummy hosts so that I can have enough to make sure that pagination occurs. So that is, in this particular case, of no concern. Now, when you are finding a bug, with Fleet, everything's open source. We really invite you to submit directly to GitHub any issues that you find. What's really helpful and important is that you have clear reproduction steps. So we've got a great form or template ticket that you can fill out where we'll ask what version you're running, what type of user you are, whether you're an administrator or a maintainer, if you're on a premium plan. And we'll ask you to provide us with some information about either your feature request or bug report. And with bug reports in particular, it's really important that you give as much information as possible. So as a tester, it doesn't matter if I'm Dee Dee from Dexter and I can break everything in sight if I can't reproduce how I broke it. So what does this button do is far less important to the developers than this reproduces. If I press this button and everything explodes, I need to make sure that it explodes a second time. So that's why on the host page, when we deleted, we went back and ran a second test exactly the same to make sure that using the same steps in the same order would reproduce. At Fleet, we're real big fans of attaching a little Loom video when anyone's comfortable so that you can show and demonstrate very clearly what is happening. Here we're getting no such table, which is probably expected for this particular query. I probably picked not a great query to verify in this particular case. So let's see if we run another one. All of that to say that there's a certain methodical element to testing that is very important when you're a human tester. It can be fun to sort of put on different personas or to say, let me imagine that a cat sat on my keyboard and I'm verifying that we can fail gracefully in that situation. But if you can't give clear instructions for how you did it, it's not going to be usable by the engineers who will be responsible for fixing it. If anyone's familiar with the peanut butter and jelly sandwich question that you may have had to do in high school or college or in job interviews, it's a pretty critical one in the QA world, because how you break a task down into how many increments and are you giving useful detail or extraneous detail really affects the efficacy with which a team can fix your report. And that's a fun tip if you ever do need to contact customer support for any service that you're using as well. So twice in a row, I picked some bad queries for us to use as an example. We're clearly running them, so that's pretty good for us. We're going to take a side step here and see about removing a query or about creating a new query. We're going to pick a new query. There we go. We're definitely getting results. So we can feel pretty confident that queries are working as well. The only thing you haven't seen me do is add new hosts. So we're going to take advantage of this script. We're going to let it run for us for a little while. And watch the host count go up. And in the meantime, while it's running, we'll do some quick verification of pagination, that we're able to switch to the next page. We're definitely switching which page we're on. may have thrown just a little too much at it for the setup I currently have. We see that we now have 260. Some of them have added incorrectly, but that's because I stopped the process before it finalized. And I'll run a manual test of enrolling one specific host as well to verify. But for the purposes of this demo, I don't want to slow you down too much. This will be really handy for us for testing pagination, because up here at the top, there is incomplete data. So when this skips to the next page, it'll be very clear to us that it's working. So once smoke test passed, you can feel reasonably confident that nothing core was affected by any of the changes. And I would go back to the release board and I would spend some time doing exploratory and acceptance testing on the specific tickets that were targeted for the patch release. I hope that you've gotten something out of this. Please let us know in the comments if there's anything that you'd like to know more about.